If you enjoy this story, subscribe and share your horror story idea in the comments. Your idea might be featured in a future episode. Now let's begin. The alert came through at 9:14 in the morning, and it named a trail that has never existed. I know that sounds like the kind of thing people say to make a story sound bigger than it is. It isn't. I pulled the log. The timestamp is 09:14:06. The alert was an evacuation order, priority 1, the kind that pushes to every phone inside the affected zone, whether people want it or not. And it told everyone on the Halden Spur Trail to leave immediately and clear the corridor by last light. There is no Halden Spur Trail, not on our maps, not on the Federal Survey, not on the GPS layer, not on the wooden sign at the trailhead, not anywhere. I spent the better part of a year building the map layer for this park myself. I would have known. I want to explain why that scared me before I understood any of it. Because if you've never worked a job where lives run through a computer screen, it's hard to feel the weight of it. When you're the person who sends the evacuation order, you carry the quiet knowledge that people out there are going to do exactly what your message tells them to do. They'll turn around on a ridge. They'll pull kids off a creek bank. They'll trust the words on the screen more than their own eyes, because that's what the words are for. So when the words start describing a place that isn't real, you can't just close the window and go get coffee. Somewhere out there, a phone might be buzzing in a stranger's pocket, telling them to walk towards something that isn't on any map I've ever seen. I didn't leave. I want that on the record early, because later I had a lot of chances to walk out and I didn't take any of them until it was almost too late. Let me back up just enough. My name is Cole Merrick. I run dispatch and mapping for a mid-sized park in the interior of the state. I'm not a ranger. I don't wear the hat or hike the backcountry or pull people off cliffs. I sit in a low building near the main entrance with 3 monitors and a radio console and a coffee machine that's older than I am. And I make sure the right information gets to the right people at the right time. Trail closures, weather holds, incident logs, the emergency alert pipeline. When a bear wanders into a campground, I'm the one who pushes the notice. When a storm cell builds over the high country, I'm the one who tells the ridge trails to come down. It's not glamorous work. It's careful work. And I took it because I needed something careful. I'd spent a decade in a city job that paid better and left me feeling like a smear on a spreadsheet. And after my divorce, I wanted quiet, and I wanted rules, and I wanted to matter to somebody, even if it was only a hiker I'd never meet. This job gave me all 3. I was good at it. That part matters later. That morning was nothing. I want to be honest about how ordinary it was. Cool for late September. The sky that flat white that means the sun's going to burn through by noon. I'd come in at 7, checked the overnight log, refilled the coffee, and started my usual sweep of the systems. The alert software we use is called a CAP terminal, which just means it's the box that formats emergency messages so they can go out to phones and radios and highway signs all at once. It logs everything. Every message gets an incident code. Every code gets a timestamp. Nothing moves through that system without leaving a marking. That's the whole point of it. So when the screen flashed at 9:14, my first thought wasn't fear, it was irritation. An outbound alert had gone active and I hadn't sent it. The header read the same as any evacuation order I'd ever pushed. Priority 1, affected area, instruction line, but the incident code was one I didn't recognize. It read WLF-0417. Our codes don't look like that. Ours start with the park's 3-letter identifier and then a running number reset each season. WLF wasn't anything, and the affected area field where the trail or zone name goes said Halden Spur. I read the instruction line twice. Advise all parties clear the corridor by last light. We don't phrase things that way. We say evacuate immediately. We say proceed to the nearest trailhead. We say seek shelter. We don't say corridor, and we don't say last light. Last light isn't even a term we use in writing because it isn't a fixed time. It means dusk, roughly, which is exactly the kind of vague you're not supposed to put in an emergency order. If I'd written that In training, my instructor would have failed me on the spot. At the time, I told myself it was a test message. That's the boring truth of what I thought first. Twice a year, the system runs automated integrity tests, and sometimes those tests use placeholder text, fake trail names, dummy codes, nonsense timestamps to make sure the pipeline formats everything correctly before a real message hits it. A test would explain the weird code. It would explain the strange phrasing. It would explain the trail I'd never heard of because placeholder names are supposed to be fake. That's the point of them. The only problem was that the test flag wasn't set. There's a field in the header, a little tag that reads, test when a message is an integrity test. It keeps fake alerts from reaching real phones. On the message in front of me, that field was blank, not marked test, marked live, which meant if the system was telling the truth, that at 9:14 that morning, an evacuation order for a trail that doesn't exist had gone out live to every phone in the affected zone. I need to tell you what I did next, because I did the right things and it didn't matter. I checked the affected zone first. Every alert draws a shape on a map, a polygon we call it, the outline of the area that gets the message. If I could see where the alert had gone, I'd at least know whose phones had lit up. I pulled the polygon for WLF-0417, and it drew a long, thin ribbon across the eastern quarter of the park. Not a circle, not a box, the way our zones usually are. A line, narrow, maybe 100 yards wide, running for what looked like 3 miles through a section of forest that has no trails in it at all. It followed the terrain the way a real trail would, hugging a drainage, bending around a ridge. It looked honestly like a path. But there's no path there. I've flown that section on satellite 100 times. It's timber and rock and a seasonal creek. Nobody hikes it because there's nothing to hike to and no way to get in. I pulled up the trail layer and turned it on over the polygon, expecting the ribbon to sit over empty ground. It did. Not a single one of our marked trails came within a mile of it. Then, because I'm thorough, I turned on the historical layer, the decommissioned and abandoned routes we keep for reference, trails that were closed years ago but still show as faint gray lines. Empty there too. No Halden Spur, no anything. So I had a live evacuation order, sent by no one, coded in a format we don't use, worded in language we don't use, for a trail that has never appeared on any map in the 2 systems that are supposed to contain every trail this park has ever had. I remember sitting back in my chair and actually laughing a little. Not because it was funny, because the human brain does that. When it's handed something that doesn't fit, it tries to shake it off like a bad hand of cards. I told myself, corrupted test message, placeholder text that escaped without the test flag, a glitch. Software does strange things, and I've cleaned up after plenty of it. The responsible move was to cancel the alert, file a fault report, and call the state office to ask if their end had hiccuped. I reached for the console to cancel it, and that's when I noticed the number, WLF-0417. I'd read it 3 times already without it registering, but codes have a grammar, once you've worked with them long enough. That 4-digit tail isn't random. In a running sequence, 0417 means there were 416 before it. A test message wouldn't carry a sequence number in the 400s. Tests reset. Tests use round dummy numbers, 0019999. This looked like a message that belonged to a series, a long one that had been counting up quietly for a while. I opened the archive search and typed WLF into the query field just to prove myself wrong, just to watch it come back empty so I could file my report and move on with my morning. It didn't come back. The results were still populating the little wheel spinning, rows starting to stack up, more of them than I expected, more than a glitch should have made when the phone on my desk rang. Not the radio, the public line, the one hikers call from the trailhead kiosks and their own cells when something's wrong. I picked it up on reflex, my eyes still on the screen, on the rows, still loading. Park dispatch, this is Cole. There was wind on the other end. That specific hollow roar of open country against a phone microphone. Then a woman's voice. Young. Tight in the way people get when they're trying to stay calm and losing. Hi, yeah, I'm sorry. I got an alert on my phone. An evacuation. It says to leave the trail before dark. A pause. The wind. I'm on the trail it named, but I can't find the way you people are talking about, and my map app doesn't show where I'm standing. Can you tell me which direction to go? I looked at the screen. The archive was still loading. I looked at the trail layer, at the empty ground, where her signal should have been coming from. Sure, I said, and I heard my own voice go careful and slow, the way it does when I'm buying time. I can help with that. Can you tell me the name of the trail the alert gave you? Yeah, she said. It says Halden Spur. Halden Spur, I repeated, and I wrote it on the pad by my keyboard the way I write everything, because a written note is a thing that exists even after the screen changes its mind. Okay, I've got you. Stay where you are for 1 second while I pull your location. Don't move off the path. What's your name? Aaron. Aaron Vance. The wind swallowed part of it. Look, I don't usually panic about this stuff. I hike alone all the time, but the alert says to clear the corridor by last light, and I don't know what corridor means, and I can't tell which way is out. There it was again. That phrase. Clear the corridor by last light. I'd read it on my screen 20 minutes earlier in cold text, and now a stranger 3 miles into the backcountry was saying it back to me in a voice that was starting to shake. It's a strange thing, hearing a piece of a computer error come out of a living person's mouth. It stops being an error at that point. It becomes a fact that two systems agree on the machine and the human, and my whole job is built on the idea that when the machine and the human agree, you believe them. That phrasing's a little unusual, I said, keeping it light, keeping it easy. We're going to get you sorted. First thing, can you look at your phone and tell me the coordinates? Should be under your map app or the compass app, little numbers, latitude and longitude. I heard her breathing change, the fumble of a cold hand on a screen. Then she read me 2 numbers. I typed them into the mapping console and hit enter, and the little marker dropped onto the terrain. I sat very still. The pin landed in the eastern quarter of the park. It landed inside the polygon. It landed on the thin ribbon that the alert had drawn across ground where no trail is, and around the pin on my authoritative map, the map I built. There was nothing. No trail line, no junction, no structure, just the shaded green of forest and the thin blue thread of the seasonal creek, and her, standing in the middle of it, telling me she was on a path. Okay, I've got your position, I said, and I want to be clear that my voice did not change, because that's the job. You do not let them hear it. You're doing everything right. Describe what you're standing on for me, under your feet. Is it dirt, gravel, rock? It's packed dirt. It's a real trail. There's tread, there's those little wooden posts with the numbers on them, the mile markers. A breath. There's a marker right next to me. It says 9. We don't have numbered milepost markers in that part of the park. We phased those out years ago, replaced them with the routed wooden signs at junctions. The old numbered posts had been pulled and hauled to the maintenance yard before I ever worked here. Dana told me that once, back when I was learning the park, that the old posts used to be everywhere and now they were gone. I remember it because she'd said it like she missed them. That's helpful, Aaron. Really helpful. I pulled up the trail layer again and toggled the historical overlay, the decommissioned routes, and dragged it over her pin, praying to see a faint gray ghost of an old path under her feet. Something, anything, that would turn this back into a database problem I could fix. Nothing. Empty ground. Cole? Her voice had gone smaller. Is there something wrong? You went quiet? No, I'm here, just reading the map. Which was true. I was reading a map that disagreed with a person standing on the ground it described. Aaron, I want you to do something for me, and it's going to sound strange. I want you to look back the way you came. Can you see the trailhead you started from? Or a sign? Anything that tells you where you entered? There was a long pause. Wind. Then, that's the thing. I don't remember a trailhead. I've been walking a while, and I was following the trail. I know I was on a real trail, but when I try to think about where I parked or the sign at the start, it's just, she stopped. That's weird, right? That's not normal. I don't forget stuff like that. At the time, I told myself she was scared and scared, disoriented people misremember. People get turned around in the woods, and their memory of the entry point smears. It happens. I'd read it in a dozen incident reports. It was the reasonable explanation, and I reached for it with both hands. That happens more than you'd think. When the adrenaline's up, I said, don't worry about how you got in. Let's just get you out. I've got your coordinates locked. I'm going to walk you toward the nearest real trail, okay? It's about a mile west of you. Turn so the creek is on your left and start walking. Okay, creek on my left. Walking. I heard her footsteps, the crunch of tread. Then, wait, which creek? There's water on both sides of me. The trail's like running right down the middle of it's like a low spot with water on both sides. There is one creek in that section. One, seasonal, single channel. I stared at the blue thread on the map, one line, and listened to her tell me she was standing between two of them. That was the moment I stopped being able to pretend this was software. I put her on speaker and stood up so I could see across the room. Dana was at the far console with her headset half off, and she was already looking at me because she'd worked this room for 19 years, and she can read the back of my neck. Dana's the closest thing I have to a real coworker in that building. She's older, dry, allergic to drama, the kind of person who's seen enough genuine emergencies that she doesn't waste energy on fake ones. If I ever needed a person to tell me I was overreacting, it was her, and I wanted her to tell me that more than I've wanted almost. Dana, I said, hand over the phone. I've got a live hiker in the East Quarter on a trail that isn't on the map, and there's an evacuation alert for it that I didn't send. Codes WLF-0417. I watched her face do something I'd never seen it do. It didn't go to skepticism, which is where Dana's face always goes first. It went still, careful. She set her coffee down without looking at it. Say that code again, she said. WLF-0417. She didn't answer right away. She reached over and muted her own console, which she never does, and she looked at the phone in my hand like it might be warm. Who's the caller? She said. Not a question. Flat. Erin Vance, solo hiker. She's disoriented, memories fuzzy on her entry point, and she's telling me there's water on both sides of a trail that doesn't exist. I lowered my voice even though the phone was already muted on her end. Dana, what is that code? You know that code? She was quiet for a second too long. Then she said, get her out. Whatever else, get her out and then we'll talk. And she turned back to her screen, and I saw her open the archive search and type something fast. And I saw her stop. I took Erin off speaker and put the phone back to my ear. Erin, you still with me? I'm here. Her breathing was ragged now, the wind louder like she'd started moving faster. I turned, I'm walking, but the trail keeps, a broken sound, half laugh, half something else. It keeps bending back. I walk and it curves, and I swear I'm passing the same marker. It says 9 again. How can it say 9 again? I've been walking for 5 minutes. Erin, stop walking, stop, stand still. I was on my feet, one hand flat on the desk. Don't follow the trail. I need you to step off the tread completely. Walk into the trees straight west. Don't let the path lead you. Just push into the timber and keep the sun over your right shoulder. Can you do that? Static. Wind. I don't want to step off. It says clear the corridor. If I step off the trail, I'm not in the corridor, and it said, Erin, the alert is wrong. Do you hear me? The alert is wrong. I need you to trust me instead of the alert. Step off the line didn't cut. That's the part I keep coming back to. It didn't drop the way calls drop, no beep, no dead tone. The wind just went out of it, all at once, like a door closing, and then there was a sound I have never been able to describe to anyone who wasn't there. Not silence, a kind of pressured quiet, the way your ears feel underwater, and under it, very faint, very far away, I could still hear her breathing, slow now, even, calm. Then the call ended on its own, and the screen showed me the duration 9 minutes, 11 seconds, and next to her dropped pin on the empty green ground where no trail is, my mapping console had drawn a thin new line, a path, running right through where she'd been standing, with a small icon on it I didn't recognize, a number, quietly labeling the spot. It said 9. I sat there staring at the number 9 on my own map for what felt like a long time, and was probably 4 seconds. I want to describe exactly what I did next, because I keep needing to prove to myself that I behaved like a professional and not like a man losing his grip. I saved a screen capture of the map with the new line on it. I wrote down the call duration and the disconnect time on my pad under the name Aaron Vance and the words water on both sides, and marker says 9. I flagged her coordinates for a physical welfare check, the standard response when a caller drops mid-emergency. Those are the correct steps. I did them in order. And the whole time some flat, quiet part of my brain was noting that a trail had appeared on my map at the exact moment a woman stopped being on the phone, and that these two facts were sitting next to each other like they belonged together. Donna came over before I could call the ranger station. She pulled a chair from the empty console and sat down close, which she never does, and she said low, "Show me the map." I showed her. The pin, the polygon, the new thin line with the little 9 on it. She looked at it for a while. Then she said, "That line wasn't there this morning." "No." "You didn't draw it?" "No." She nodded slowly, like I'd confirmed something she already knew and didn't want. "Okay," she said, "I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to not do the thing you do where you go find the reasonable version. Just listen first." She glanced at the door, at the window, the way people do when they're about to say something they've spent years not saying. That code, WLF. It's not ours and it's not the state's. I've seen it maybe 4 times in 19 years. Every time it came with a trail name nobody could find, and every time somebody was out there saying they were on it. What happened to them? She didn't answer that. She said, "The welfare checks always came back the same. No trail, no hiker, no vehicle at any trailhead that matched a missing person, like nobody'd ever been out there at all." She paused. And then a few days later, the whole thing would just smooth over. The alert would be gone from the log. The call record would be gone. If you'd asked me last week whether Aaron Vance existed, I'd have told you no, because by the time anyone asks, there's nothing to find. At the time, part of me wanted to tell her she was being dramatic, that she'd built a ghost story out of 4 coincidences across 2 decades. That's the part of me the job trained. But I had a screen capture and a note in my own handwriting, and a line on my map that I hadn't drawn, and the reasonable version was getting harder to hold. "Dana," I said, the code's in the 400s. WLF-0417, that's not 4 times. That's 416 before this one." She went quiet. I don't think she caught the number. I watched her do the same math I'd done, and I watched it land. "That can't be this park," she said finally. "No, it can't." I turned back to the archive search, the one that had started loading right before Aaron called, and I sat down and I actually read it this time. The results had finished populating while I wasn't looking. There were more than I could take in at once, hundreds of rows, but I filtered them the only way that made sense. I sorted by our park's identifier, just the ones tagged to us. That cut it down to 11. 11 WLF alerts in the history of this park. The oldest was from before I was born. The most recent before today was 4 years ago. And every single one of them had a trail name in the affected area field, and I recognized none of the names, and every instruction line said the same 7 words. "Advise all parties clear the corridor by last light." I pulled the trail names one at a time and searched them against every layer I had. Halden Spur, Kesset Cut, the 9 Bark Traverse, Loman Ferry Trail, names that sounded exactly like real trails. The kind of plain, worn-in names our real trails have, which is somehow worse than if they'd been strange. Not one of them appeared on the current map. Not one appeared on the decommissioned layer. As far as the 2 systems that hold every trail this park has ever had were concerned, these places had never been. And then I did the thing I should have done first, and I searched them against the paper. We keep a physical archive in the back room. Nobody uses it. It's decades of survey maps, trail crew logs, closure orders, the stuff from before everything went digital, boxes of it half cataloged. I went back there with the list of 11 names on my pad, and I started pulling boxes, and Dana came with me, and for a while neither of us said anything, just the sound of cardboard and old paper and the fluorescent hum. It was Dana who found the first one, a trail crew maintenance log, canvas cover, water-stained. She opened it flat on the table and turned it toward me and pointed, and there it was, in pencil, in a hand from decades ago. 9 bark traverse, brushed corridor, cleared tread, mile 0 to mile 3, closed for season. It was real. It had been a real trail. Somebody had walked it with a saw and written it down. So they existed, I said, and I felt a stupid flood of relief, because this was a database problem after all. This was old trails that got decommissioned and scrubbed from the digital layer and never made it into the historical overlay, a records failure, boring and human and fixable. They existed and somebody just deleted them from the system. That's all this is. Bad data migration. The alerts are pulling old trail names out of some archive we forgot to clean. Dana didn't say anything. She kept turning pages. That explains it, I said, and I heard how much I wanted it to. Old trails, purged records, alert system reading from a legacy table, nobody killed. I can write that up. I can... Cole? Dana said. She had the log open near the back. Her finger was on a page, and her voice had gone flat again, the way it had when I'd first said the code. These trails weren't decommissioned. What? Read it. She pushed the book across. The last entries in the log weren't maintenance notes. They were closure orders, and they weren't in pencil. They were stamped, official, and they didn't say closed for season or decommissioned. Each one used a phrase I'd never seen on any closure I'd ever processed. Corridor expunged from record. Do not resurvey, do not relist. And a date, and a set of initials. Expunged from record isn't a thing, I said. That's not a closure code. You close a trail, you reroute it, you decommission it. You don't expunge a trail. Trails don't get erased on purpose. Why would anyone erase a trail on purpose? That's the wrong question, Dana said quietly. Look at the dates on the closures, and then look at the dates on the WLF alerts. I laid my pad next to the log. The closure orders had dates. The alerts had dates. And they matched. Not close. Exact. Every trail that had been expunged from record had, on the same day, generated a WLF evacuation alert telling everyone to clear the corridor by last light. The erasure and the alarm were the same event. Somebody hadn't deleted these trails, and then the system malfunctioned. Somebody had raised an alarm and erased the trail in the same motion, like sealing a door and marking it at the same time. The relief was gone. What I felt instead was the specific cold of realizing your reasonable explanation was not just wrong but backward. The records weren't failing to keep up with reality, and the records were doing exactly what they'd been made to do, which was to make these places officially stop existing on purpose at the moment they became dangerous. Who signs off on an expungement, I said. Who has that authority? There have to be initials, an approving officer, somebody. I flipped to the most recent expungement in the log 4 years back, the one that matched the last WLF alert before today. There were initials at the bottom of the closure order, small, pressed hard into the paper, approved by, and then 2 letters. I read them, and I felt the floor of the whole day tilt. The initials were DR. Dana's full name is Dana Reyes. I looked up at her. She was already looking at the page, and she wasn't surprised. And that was the worst part. She'd known where this was going the second I said the code out loud, and she'd walked back into that archive with me anyway. Dana, I said, that's you. No, she said. And then, after a moment, quieter, in a voice I'd never heard her use. Not yet. What do you mean, not yet? I said, Dana, those are your initials on a closure order from 4 years ago. Either you signed it or you didn't. She sat down. She put both hands flat on the old log like she was holding it shut. And for a while she didn't say anything, and I let her not say anything because I'd learned that much about her. 4 years ago, she said finally, we had a WLF alert. I was on shift. A trail nobody could find. A caller who couldn't remember how she got in. Same as this morning. Same exact thing. She kept her eyes on the log. I did everything you did. I pulled the archive. I found the closure orders. And when I got to the bottom of the stack, there was a blank one. An expungement form, filled out except for the approval line, waiting, with today's date already printed on it. Waiting for a signature? Waiting for mine. She turned her hands over, looked at her own palms. Nobody asked me to sign it. There was no supervisor, no memo, no phone call. It was just there, in the box, filled out in a hand I didn't recognize, needing 2 letters. And I understood, I don't know how. I just understood that if I signed it, the trail would be gone. Off the map, out of the record, expunged. And whoever was out there on it would be gone too, but cleanly. No missing person file. No welfare check that turns up empty. No grieving family calling for years. Just a place that had never existed, and a person who had never been on it. You signed it, I said. I signed it. She looked at me then, straight on. You want to hear that I agonized. I didn't. It took me about 10 seconds, because the alternative was to leave it open, and I'd already figured out by then that leaving it open doesn't save anybody. The person on the trail is already lost the second the alert goes live. Signing doesn't take them. Signing just closes the door behind them, stops it spreading, stops the corridor growing toward anybody else. At the time, I thought she was rationalizing something monstrous. I thought, this is a woman who signed off on erasing a human being and has spent 4 years telling herself it was mercy. I sat with that for a second, wanting to be angry at her, because anger was cleaner than what I actually felt, which was fear that she was right. So the expungement isn't a cover-up, I said slowly. It's containment. It's both, she said. That's the part nobody tells you. Yeah, it hides what happened. Nice and quiet, no headlines, no investigation, no reason for anyone above us to ask what's out there in the East Quarter. But it also stops it. I've read the ones before mine. Every WLF alert that got signed off the corridor closed. One trail, one person done. And the alerts where nobody signed. She stopped. What about those? The number keeps going up, she said. That's your 416, Cole. That's not 416 people from this park. That's every WLF alert across every park where somebody didn't sign, going back decades, all counting into the same sequence. Because it's all one system. The unsigned ones don't stop. The corridor just keeps extending. New trail names append onto the old ones. It reaches further every time until someone finally closes the door, and then the count jumps to the next park and starts creeping towards somebody else. I turned back to my console. I didn't want to, but I had to see the thing she was describing. I pulled up WLF-0417, the live one, errands, and I looked at the affected area field and my stomach dropped because it had changed. This morning it had said one thing, Halden Spur. Now it said 2. Halden Spur, and under it, appended below, a second name, Kesset Cut. I checked my notes. Kesset Cut was on my list of 11-1 of the old expunged trails from decades back. One Dana had already signed closed before either of us was here. It shouldn't have been able to come back, but there it was, appended to the live alert. And when I pulled the polygon, the thin ribbon on the map was longer than it had been that morning. It had grown, where before it had run 3 miles through empty forest. Now it ran further, bending south, picking up the ghost of that second trail, the 2 corridors linking into one longer line. It's extending, I said, right now, while we've been in the back room. It picked up a trail you already closed, and it's Dana. It grew. It's growing. She came around the desk and looked. I heard her breath change. That's new, she said. It's never done that this fast. 4 years ago I had until dusk, all day. It's not even noon, and it's already on the second name. She straightened up. Cole, where is there a blank form? Is there a blank expungement in the box? I went back and I looked, and I want to tell you there wasn't, but there was. same as she'd described. An expungement order, filled out in a hand neither of us recognized, everything complete except the approval line, and today's date already printed at the top. Waiting. I brought it out and set it on the desk between us. Neither of us touched it. So I sign it? I said, that's the play. I sign it, the corridor closes, Aaron stays lost, but nobody else gets pulled in, and the count jumps to some other park, and this is over for us. That's what you're telling me. That's what I did, Dana said. But you're not telling me to do it. She was quiet. Why aren't you telling me to do it, Dana? She looked at the door, and then at the window, and then at me, and she said, because it's growing faster than it should, and because it appended a trail I already closed, which it's never done, and because I don't think this one wants what the others wanted. The old ones took the person on the trail and stopped. This one already has Aaron, and it's still reaching, still adding, still getting longer. She swallowed. And I want you to look at the newest name it appended, not Kesset under that. It added a third while you were in the back. I looked. Under Halden Spur, under Kesset, a third line had appeared in the affected area field of the live alert. And it wasn't a trail name. It was a road, a county road, a real one, paved on every map, the one that runs east out of the park, past the ranger housing, and the little cluster of staff cabins where 3 of our people live, the one I take every night to get home. The corridor wasn't just growing. It had reached the edge of the forest, found a real road, and started walking it toward the places people sleep. The road on the alert changed everything, because a road is a thing I know. I have driven that county road 1,100 times. I know the mile markers on it, the real ones, the metal ones the county maintains. And I know that at dusk the light comes low and gold through the trees on the west side, and you have to drop your visor near the second cattle guard. It is the most ordinary stretch of pavement in my life, and the system that had spent all morning naming places that don't exist had just named a place that does, and put it on the same list as the trail that swallowed Aaron Vance. It's out of the woods, I said. Dana, it's on the road. It's on my road. Then you sign the form, she said, and now she did say it fast, like the reluctance had burned off. You sign it right now, before the corridor gets to the road, because once it's on real ground, I don't know if closing the trail even. The radio cut her off. It was Marcus. Marcus is one of the field rangers, a big steady kid, 6 years in, lives in the second staff cabin off the county road with a dog and a truck he's always fixing. He'd been dispatched that morning for the welfare check on Aaron's coordinates. I'd flagged it myself, hours ago, before any of this had come apart. I'd forgotten he was even out there. That's the thing about a day like that. It gets so big so fast that you lose track of the people you sent into it. Dispatch, this is Marcus, you copy? I keyed the mic. Go for dispatch. Yeah, I'm at the coordinates you flagged for the welfare check. The Vance caller. A pause, wind on his end too. The same hollow roar Aaron had had. Cole, there's a trail out here. Everything in the room stopped. Say again, Marcus. There's a trail, real one, packed tread, mileposts and everything. It's not on my GPS. My unit's showing me standing in open timber, but I'm looking at a trail with my own eyes. There's one of the old numbered posts right here, and there's his voice dropped. There's fresh boot prints, small ones, heading in. Somebody walked in here recently and didn't walk out. Marcus, listen to me very carefully. Do not step onto that trail. Do you understand? Do not put a foot on the tread. Step back the way you came and get in your truck. I think it's the caller's tracks, Cole. She might still be close. I can't just... Marcus. I was standing. Dana had her hand on my shoulder. Hard. That is an order. Do not follow the tracks. The alert is not a malfunction. The trail is what the alert is warning about. Get off it and get in your truck and drive back here. Do you copy? A long silence. Wind. And under it faint. That same pressured underwater quiet I'd heard at the end of Aaron's call. Marcus, do you copy? Yeah, he said, and his voice had changed. It had gone even. Calm. The way Aaron's breathing had gone calm right before the line ended. Yeah, I copy. It's fine, Cole. It's real close. I can see the mile marker from here. It's just up ahead. It says 9. Marcus, do not. The radio didn't cut. It did what the phone had done. The wind went out of it all at once, like a door closing, and there was the quiet, and then nothing. I keyed the mic and said his name 4 times. Nothing came back, and on my map, on the empty green ground where his welfare check had sent him, a thin, new line drew itself, extending the corridor, and a small icon appeared on it, and I already knew what number it would say before I zoomed in. 9. Dana was very still beside me. He followed the tracks, she said. He went in after her. She said it the way you say a thing you've seen before. That's how it grows, Cole. It doesn't just take who's on the trail. It takes whoever goes in after them. Every welfare check, every searcher, every good person who can't leave somebody out there. The corridor eats the search. That's the fuel. That's why it reaches. Every time somebody goes looking, the trail gets longer because it needs a reason to extend. And the reason is us going in to help. And I understood finally, all at once, the shape of the thing. The alert names a trail. Someone's on it. You send a searcher because that's your job. That's the whole point of you. You cannot leave a person lost in the backcountry. The searcher finds the tracks, follows them, gets taken. Now there are 2 people out there. So you send another searcher and it takes them too. And the corridor grows with every act of rescue until it walks out of the forest and onto a real road toward real houses. The system isn't hunting hikers. It's hunting the impulse to save them. It runs on decency. It runs on exactly the thing that makes me good at this job. That's why you sign the form, Dana said, quiet and fast. Signing isn't erasing them. They're already gone. Signing closes the corridor so you stop feeding it, so you stop sending people in so it can't reach the road. You have to stop the search. All of it. Officially, right now. There are 2 people out there. There are 2 people who are already gone. And there's a road full of people who aren't yet. Her grip on my shoulder tightened. Cole, I have done this. I know what it costs. You sign the paper, the trail comes off the map, the search gets called off, and you have to live the rest of your life knowing you closed a door on somebody instead of going after them. That's the price. That's the whole price. But if you leave it open, if you send 1 more person in, it reaches the cabins by dark. And then it's not 2 people. It's Marcus's whole street. I looked at the blank form on the desk, filled out in a hand neither of us knew. Today's date already printed at the top, hours before today started, waiting for 2 letters. And I looked at the live alert and I watched in real time a 4th name append itself to the affected area field. Under Halden Spur, under Kesset Cut, under the county road, it was my name. Not a trail, not a road, Cole Merrick, and after it my dispatch call sign, the one only the system and my own people use. The corridor had a destination now, and the destination was the building I was sitting in, and it had addressed the last leg of the alert to me personally by the name and number that prove I'm the one who works this desk. Dana, I said, my mouth was dry. It's got my call sign. It's not reaching for the road anymore. It's reaching for here. For me. She looked at the screen, and for the first time all day, Donna Reyes looked afraid. Then it already knows you're going to do something, she said. It only names you when it thinks you're about to feed it or close it. It's waiting to see which. She pushed the pen across the desk toward me, and her hand was shaking. Whatever you're going to do it before last light. Because that's the deadline. That's what clear the corridor by last light means. It was never an instruction to the hikers. It's a countdown for the person at this desk. I looked at the window. The flat white morning had burned off exactly like I'd known it would, and the afternoon was already going long and gold, the light coming low through the trees on the west side of the lot, the way it does, right before dusk. I picked up the pen. I want you to know that. I picked it up, and I put the tip against the approval line, and I got as far as the first stroke of a C before I stopped, because something Dana said was still turning in my head. It only names you when it thinks you're about to feed it or close it. And I thought about the 416 alerts. Before this one, all those parks, all those people at all those desks who'd signed the form and closed the door and made a lost person officially never exist. Donna had signed hers 4 years ago, and it had worked, and the corridor had closed, and the count had jumped to the next park. But the count had kept going. Signing didn't stop the system. Signing just moved it. Every closed door made the number climb somewhere else. Dana had spent 4 years believing she'd done containment, and she had for this park, for those 4 years. But 416 corridors had opened across the country because people kept doing the responsible thing, kept signing, kept feeding the sequence forward, one clean expungement at a time. The signing wasn't the cure. The signing was how it spread, quietly, procedurally, one merciful cover-up at a time, passed desk to desk by good people who thought they were closing something. Dana, I said, and I set the pen down. What happens if I don't sign it and I don't send anyone in either? She stared at me. It reaches the road. Does it, or does it reach the road because whoever's at the desk always does one of the two things it's waiting for? You said it names you when you're about to feed it or close it. Those are the only two moves it knows. What if there's a third? There's no third. If you don't close it, it grows. You saw it grow. It grew because we kept feeding it. I sent Marcus. The system before me sent searchers. Every time it extended, it was because somebody at this desk responded either by sending a person in or by signing a form that acknowledges the corridor is real and needs closing. Both of those are answers, Dana. Both of them are me telling the system I see the trail. I looked at the screen, at my own name in the affected area field, at my call sign sitting there like a hand held out. It put my name on the alert because it needs the person at this desk to answer. That's the fuel, not the searchers, the answer, the acknowledgement. You feed it by treating the trail as real, even to close it? So what? Dana said, and her voice cracked. You just do nothing? You let it come? Cole, last light is, I don't answer it. I said, I don't sign the form because signing is an answer. I don't send anyone in because that's an answer too. I don't cancel the alert. I don't acknowledge the alert. I don't transmit one single thing on that code. As far as this desk is concerned, WLF-0417 does not exist. It never came in. There is no Halden Spur, there is no Kesset Cut, there is no corridor, and there is no Cole Merrick with a call sign for it to reach because I never picked up the other end. It sounds simple, said like that. It was the hardest thing I have ever done, and all it required was sitting still, because the whole time my hands wanted to work. That's what they're trained for. There was a live alert on my screen, and 2 of my people were out in that corridor, and every instinct I have, every reason I took this careful job in the first place, was screaming at me to do something. Send someone. Cancel it. Close it. Save what could be saved. The pull to act was physical. It was worse than fear. Fear you can sit through. This was the pull of being the kind of person who helps, of being good at the one thing I was good at, and the system was built to run on exactly that. It didn't want my compliance, it wanted my competence, and it wanted me to be the man who couldn't leave a lost person unanswered. So I sat on my hands, literally. I put my hands under my thighs like a kid in trouble, and I made myself watch the screen and do nothing. The light in the window went from gold to amber. Donna stood beside me the whole time and didn't say a word, and I understood that she was letting me try it, that after 4 years of believing signing was the only mercy, she was standing at the edge of a different answer, and she was terrified of it, and she was letting me reach for it anyway. The affected area field flickered. I watched my name sit there. I waited for a 5th line to append, for the corridor to jump the last distance to the desk, for the underwater quiet to come into the room and take the wind out of everything. It didn't grow. For the first time all day, the alert held still. No new trail, no new road, no new name. The corridor had reached the length of my call sign and stopped, because there was nothing at that end answering it, no acknowledgement for it to build the next segment on. A trail needs someone to walk it. This one needed someone to say it was there, and I wouldn't. The amber went to gray. The low light left the trees on the west side of the lot. somewhere out past the second cattle guard. Last light came and went over a county road I have driven 1,100 times, and nothing walked out of the woods onto it. At 6:52 that evening, WLF-0417 dropped off the terminal on its own. No cancellation, no log entry saying it had closed. It just wasn't there anymore, the way it had never been there in any of the systems that are supposed to hold everything. The polygon vanished from the map. The thin lines vanished. The little markers that said 9, all of it gone, like a hand, wiping a fogged window clear. If you search the archive now for WLF-0417, you would find nothing, because I never answered it. And a thing that is never answered leaves. No record of the asking. Aaron Vance is still gone. Marcus is still gone. I have to be honest about that because I keep wanting to find a version of this where sitting still saved them. And there isn't one. They were lost the moment the alert named the trail they were on, same as Dana always said. What I did didn't bring them back. It just refused to trade them for a paved road full of sleeping strangers. And it refused to sign the form that would have made them officially never exist. And it refused to feed the number one more increment forward to the next park and the next desk and the next good person. There were welfare checks after. Real ones, mine, filed properly, for a missing hiker named Aaron Vance and a missing ranger named Marcus. They came back the way Dana told me they would. No trail, no tracks, no vehicle at any trailhead. But I made sure the files stayed open. I made sure their names stayed in the system as missing, not expunged, because the one thing I could still do for them was refuse to let the record swallow them the clean way the corridor wanted. Let it be a mystery. Let it be an open case that bothers people. A thing that is remembered is a thing that was never fully answered, and I've decided that's the closest thing to a door I can hold shut. Dana retired that winter. Before she left, she told me she'd sleep better, knowing there was one desk at least where the form didn't get signed. Then she told me something else, quietly at the door, the way she'd told me everything that day. She said the count doesn't stop just because one park stops feeding it. She said it only moved. I checked a few weeks ago. I shouldn't have. But I have access to the wider system, and I searched WLF one more time, and the sequence has kept climbing. It's in the 420s now. Different parks, different states, trail names I've never heard, plain and worn in and real sounding. And I know that at each of those desks, there is a person reading an evacuation order for a place that doesn't exist, watching a corridor reach toward a road, holding a blank form filled out in a hand they don't recognize, dated today, waiting for 2 letters. Most of them will sign it. That's the thing I can't stop thinking about. Signing feels like mercy, and it feels like closure, and it is neither. It's just the next segment of a trail that runs desk to desk instead of ridge to ridge, extended one careful, decent, responsible answer at a time. I still work the desk. I still send the bear notices and the storm holds and the real evacuations for the real trails. I'm still good at it. And every morning I check the terminal and I look at the incident codes. And as long as they start with our 3 plain letters and a running number that resets each season, I do my job the way I always have. But I've made one rule for myself, and it's the only rule I have that isn't in any manual. If a code ever comes through starting with WLF, I don't read the trail name. I don't pull the polygon. I don't answer the phone if it rings with wind on the other end. I sit on my hands and I wait for last light, and I let it pass without a single word from this desk, because the only way to clear the corridor is to never once admit it's there.